about issues, and really what it is about is parents should have a say in what's happening with our kids. And I think most Americans support that, but it's good to know the Democrats' playbook, and we're going to push back on that, especially coming from a Democrat Party that is banning freedom of speech, that is canceling people, that is destroying your life if you don't think with their orthodoxy. This is a Democrat Party who's saying if you think outside of the box of everything we are dictating to you, we will make you lose your job, we will destroy you. So they're banning people. They're banning freedom of speech and freedom of thought. Republicans are protecting children.
All right, we will see you on the campaign trail. Much to come ahead of the debate and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, up next, there's renewed pressure on Democrats to potentially hold primary debates, even with President Biden in as an incumbent and a clear primary front runner. I'll bring in Democratic Senator next to ask him whether the party should bring in all three declared candidates to their debate stage.
Now, your 3-day weather forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
Periods of rain today with a high 60 to 65. Rain, chance of a thunderstorm tonight, ending after midnight, low 50 to 55. Tomorrow, partly sunny and breezy, high near 65. Mostly cloudy tomorrow night, chance of a shower, low near 50. Tuesday, mostly cloudy with scattered showers, high 55 to 60. That's your Bloomberg 3-day weather forecast. I'm Larry Kosky. Now, a check of sports.
The Knicks dominated the Miami Heat during the regular season, winning 3 of 4. They meet in Game 1 of the East semifinals at the Garden. In Sacramento, the Kings host the Warriors in Game 7 of their opening round series. NHL, the Rangers and Devils meet in Game 7 Monday at the Prudential Center. Elsewhere, the Maple Leafs and Oilers advance to the second round. The Yankees close out their 4-game set with the Rangers in Arlington. And for the second straight day, the Mets and Braves are postponed due to rain. That's a Bloomberg Sports Update. I'm Joel Stern.
Now that the president has officially said he is running again, he faces serious new scrutiny from Democrats. That's in part because he already has 2 primary challengers, and that means pressure to explain his record and pressure on the party to maybe hold primary debates. Joining me now to discuss, Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland. Senator, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
It's great to be with you.
Good to see you this morning. Okay, so the president has launched the re-election, but he does so against some very challenging numbers. These are from Fox News, our brand new polls. He's got a 56% unfavorable rating among registered voters. When we pull on everything from national security to immigration to the economy, he is upside down on all of those numbers. Folks are giving him a bad report card, and that includes Democrats who say they don't want to see him run. So are you worried about the lack of excitement, the dissatisfaction with his record going into 24?
I'm not worried because he has a great record to run on. Polls will go up, polls will go down, but what won't change are the facts. 12 million new jobs since he was elected president, which is a record, historical record, including the greatest growth in manufacturing jobs in 40 years. Record low unemployment, 3.5%, I should say the lowest in 50 years. So he's got a great economic record to run on. Inflation is coming down. That's obviously been an issue. But I think he's got a great record to run on, and I think the polls will bounce around as they always do. But as the president said last night, you just quoted him, don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative.
That's one of his lines I think we'll hear again and again. You talk about the economy, but it's not translating to the average American. Our polling also shows that when people were asked how personally you're doing, because it's all about our families and how they're doing under our roof, 70% of them said things are actually getting worse for them. I mean, that's happening on the president's watch.
Well, I think one of the things you're seeing in polling these days is a great polarization between Democrats and Republicans, even on questions like how you're feeling on the economy.
But I would say the majority of Democrats within that poll also said things were getting worse for them.
Right. So the issue of inflation has been very real. The good news is it is coming down. The other good news is the most recent economic report shows that people's real wages are going up. So wages have now been going up, especially for lower and middle income families. At a faster pace than inflation. So those are real gains, and I think that they will continue. So look, obviously what's happening in the economy will also change, but I think the structural pieces of it are sound, and that's what's going to be important going into the election.
What do you make about the debate over his age? Because both NBC and CBS have polls out that show, including Democrats, they're very worried about the issue of age. Axios writes this: even some of Biden's close advisors concede his age has diminished his energy, significantly limiting his schedule. Michelle Goldberg writes over at the New York Times, she thinks he's a great president, but adds this: it's hard to ignore the toll of Biden's years no matter how hard elected Democrats try. She says essentially he should be taking a victory lap, not launching a re-election campaign. So what about this issue of age?
Well, I saw the president last night. He was in fighting form. I saw him at the event with the South Korean president, having a great press conference. So look, I think people should judge presidents on their performance and their record, not on their age. And the president has a great record. I talked about some of the economic factors. He's also been one of the most productive presidents in recent history when it comes to a legislative record. Major bipartisan victories, right? We had the infrastructure bill. We had the chips and science bill to make sure we're more competitive vis-a-vis China and others, and the veterans health care bill. And then there were also major wins when it came to bringing down the cost of prescription drugs and deploying more clean energy. So, Shannon, what I would say is just look at his record. That's what we should be judging people on, not on age.
Well, what do you make of Senator Joe Manchin, one of your Democratic colleagues, who is very critical of one of those major legislative successes for the president, for the White House, the Inflation Reduction Act? He says it's not being implemented the way that it was written, and he's talking about if there was a vote on repeal, he would vote for it. And he's been voting with Republicans quite a bit on a number of key issues recently. I mean, he's got a lot of criticism for the president.
Well, Joe Biden's doing what any senator should do, which is sticking up for his state and using his leverage however he can. And that's what Joe Biden's doing when it comes to... Excuse me. Joe, exactly. That's what Joe Manchin's doing when it comes to these issues. He's fighting for West Virginia and using his leverage wherever he can. So, look, I think if you look at the results of the Inflation Reduction Act, people are already seeing their prescription drugs costs coming down, people on Medicare. That's real, as is the deployment of clean energy. In my state of Maryland, we're going to have 10,000 new jobs because of offshore wind energy, driven by some of the economic incentives in the Inflation Reduction Act.
What do you make, though, of the new estimates that are coming out on that bill as it's playing out in real time, saying it's actually going to be way more expensive than we thought it was going to be on issues like green energy?
Well, first of all, we have some buffer room, right? The bill reduced the deficit over a 10-year period by over $250 billion. The fact that there's a greater appetite for clean energy is actually a good thing when it comes both to jobs and dealing with the climate crisis. So that bill has a built-in buffer, unlike many of the bills our Republican colleagues passed, like the the Trump tax cuts. This was actually something that reduced the deficit.
Okay, well, we'll watch as those new numbers continue to come in. I want to ask about the issue of access. You mentioned the president being out there, being vigorous. He hasn't done a serious sit-down with one of the major newspapers. Our polling shows that 76% of people say he needs to be holding regular press conferences. He's not doing that. The New York Times noted this week he has held the fewest news conferences since President Reagan. Actually, let's put it this way. The White House is basically hiding Biden as he auditions for another term. Does that lack of access feed this narrative that he's not up to the job and his staff is basically keeping him behind closed doors, and that's how they plan to run the campaign, much as they did during 2020 because we had to because of COVID?
Well, Shannon, the president's been doing what he should be doing, which is going out around the country and meeting with people and talking about the results from his first 2 years. He's come to Maryland more than any other president in my memory. He's been there multiple times talking about the infrastructure modernization bill, creating new tunnels, making trips faster for commuters. So I think what he's doing is going around the country and talking directly to people. I know the Washington Press Corps always wants to hear more from the president. They heard from him just the other day when the South Korean president was here, and they asked him a lot of questions, including about the age issue.
So let's talk about the dates, too, because there are Democrats challenging the president within the primary. RFK Jr. comes in our poll in 19%. I mean, that's a hefty number. He's not the only one who says they should have some primary debates.
I think he has an obligation to democracy to debate anyway. And I would hope that he does that.
Put Joe Biden up on that stage with Bobby Kennedy, who's challenging him, and Marianne Williamson, and whoever steps up to the plate, and let's have a discussion, yo.
I'm going to bleep on Sunday morning. Why not?
Well, that's up to the president's campaign. I mean, this is early. He just announced his re-election campaign. These are decisions every campaign makes, both with respect to the primary and in the general. I think the president's going to keep his eye on the ball, which is winning the general election. That's what's important for the country. What they decide to do in the primary, only time will tell.
Okay, so in the meantime, we've got to get through this debt ceiling issue, which you all are very locked in on. There's been a criticism. He says he doesn't want to negotiate over anything. Republicans have to come to the table. Well, the speaker got something passed that includes raising the debt ceiling. Whose game is it now? Because there are Democrats, plenty of folks within your party who say, okay, the president's made his point, but they have to start negotiating.
So, Shannon, what he said is that he's not going to negotiate with people who are threatening to literally blow up our economy, right? Put more people out of work, drive up costs. in order to get their way.
But the
That's what he said.
Speaker does raise the debt ceiling.
It does, but then it says in order to raise the debt ceiling, we're going to cut veterans, we're going to cut law enforcement, we're going to cut border security, we're going to cut all sorts of things. We're going to put China back in the driver's seat when it comes to clean energy. So what the president is saying, he's not going to negotiate with someone who's actually threatening the economy, taking the entire economy hostage. He will sit down with Speaker McCarthy to talk about these issues in the framework of the budget and the appropriations process. President Biden has put a plan on the table, quite a detailed budget, much more detailed than what Speaker McCarthy in the House just passed, that has $3 trillion in deficit reduction over the next 10 years, primarily by asking very, very wealthy people, billionaires and big corporations, to pay more. Speaker McCarthy has a plan that gets about, I think, $4.5 trillion over 10 years through dramatic cuts, but threatening the destruction of the U.S. economy. So
when did they get to the table? They're clearly far apart, but they got to get somewhere.
What you got to do is not threaten the detonation of the economy. So, for example, Senator Mitch McConnell, years ago when we came to this kind of impasse, said, okay, if the Congress doesn't want to do its job and actually pay to make sure the United States pays the bills, which, as you well know, are bills that are already due and owing. Which, by the way,
President Biden voted against that as a senator.
Right, but if you want to do that, give the president the authority to do it, subject to a veto, subject to an override. So that's the way to do it. If Republicans don't want to do what's necessary to prevent the meltdown of the economy, let President Biden do that, and then let's negotiate on important issues of priorities, how you best achieve deficit reduction. Republicans always talk about reducing the deficit, but they never want to raise 1 penny in income taxes on very wealthy people.
They definitely have a difference of opinion on how to get there. But hopefully the two sides do have some chats about it. Senator, thank you for coming in. Good to see you.
Thanks, Shannon. It's good to see you.
All right, up next, brand new Fox News polls with some telling numbers for both the presidential primaries and for the gun control debate. We'll bring in our Sunday panel to analyze America's mindset heading into 24 and a little bit of humor from last night's Correspondents' Dinner.
Global market news changes in an instant.
U.S.-China relations also in focus.
So don't miss a minute.
Let's talk about the division of the ACP.
Download the Bloomberg Business app and stay connected to Bloomberg Radio 24/7.
Jay Powell is weighing in on the economic recovery.
Breaking business news. Anytime, anywhere. Bloomberg Radio. Breaking business news from Sydney to Tokyo to Hong Kong. Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
I'm Brian Curtis. And I'm Doug Krismer. We'll break down China's official PMI data and look for hints on economic policy from the Politburo meeting. Plus, a look ahead to the Fed's next decisions.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia. Tonight at 6 on Bloomberg 1130. The Bloomberg Business app, BloombergRadio.com, or listen on demand wherever you get your podcasts.
Returning to Doha in May, the Qatar Economic Forum, powered by Bloomberg, is leading the charge for resilient global growth in a post-pandemic world. Join voices who are spotlighting solutions to some of our most pressing economic challenges and leading the conversations to put consumers and technology at the forefront. Hear from business titans, policymakers, emerging voices, and cultural influencers, May 23rd through 25th, as they prepare for the decades of innovation still to come. Visit QatarEconomicForum.com to learn more.
At Ron DeSantis, I had a lot of Ron DeSantis jokes ready. But Mickey Mouse beat the hell out of me and got there first.
President Biden joking about Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who may soon join the race to try to unseat him. Time now for our Sunday group. Jewish Insider, Editor-in-Chief, and Axios contributor Josh Kraushaar. Former State Department spokesperson and Fox News contributor Marie Harf. Former Utah Congressman Jason Chaffetz. And author, legal commentator, and Project 21 chairman, Horace Cooper. Welcome to all of you. You made it through the thunderstorm this morning to make it here. Okay, so let's talk about Governor DeSantis. This is a political headline. He's got a $110 million ticket to the White House. He sits atop accounts poised to support his candidacy with that total. And that's all without him opening an official campaign committee account. Jason, he met with other major donors over in Israel this week. Will the money be enough to jumpstart him, where the polls say he's flagging?
Well, money does solve a lot of problems. And when you've got $110 million, more than double anybody else, then it's going to go a long way. Super PACs are already out there spending money. You see ads and that fight's already on. The Florida State Legislature's got to pass a piece of legislation so he could declare, but I think everybody understands that, yeah, Ron DeSantis is running for president of the United States.
Okay, so here's our latest polling. This is among Republican primary voters about who they prefer at this point. President Trump with that commanding lead at 53%, Ron DeSantis at 21%, and we trickle down from there. Nikki Haley bumping up a little bit, and Vivek Ramaswamy as well. But Horace, where do you think this field stands? One headline this week, is Donald Trump inevitable? Is he?
You know, we're very, very early. I will just tell you, in my experience, since 1993, I have not seen, after a presidential election, the loser ending up in surveys prevailing over the victor. And yet, you didn't see it in 93, you didn't see it in 97, you didn't see it in 2001. You go all the way even to 2017, Hillary Clinton never led Donald Trump. We're seeing now more than a dozen times in the last year, Donald Trump ahead. That is a very good position to be in. So there's no doubt that there's still a residual level of support among Republicans, and apparently even among a large number of Americans who may now see the policies of Joe Biden and may regret them.
Well, our polling shows, as I talked about with our first two guests, that President Biden is not polling well. People are mad at him on all kinds of topics. And this poll here on Democratic primary voters, the first one that we've had since RFK Jr. entered the race, and he comes in at nearly 20%. That's against an incumbent president, Marie.
Well, I think there's a lot of interesting things in these polls. I would also note that the people that have lower approval ratings than Joe Biden, that includes Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. So people talk about Biden's approval rating. His two main competitors are actually less popular than he is.
When you look at favorability, they're almost equal.
But they're lower. And look, I think the Biden team feels good about their campaign relaunch this week. They started with this campaign video about freedom, talking about the things Republicans are doing in states, from banning books to, anti-LGBTQ laws. And they say Joe Biden's going to go out. He's going to talk